Hello and welcome to the EV Cafe Takeaway. This is a podcast focused entirely on the electric and zero emission future that we all hope for. Now, I'm Sarah Sloven and I will be joined by various members of the EV Cafe crew, or I should be, but this week it's just me. Because John Curtis is poorly, get well soon. Paul Kirby is training fleet professionals on converting to EV. Sam Clark is off doing the development of the EHGV fleet hubs with GridServe. And Johnny Berry at Navuna was in London, flying the flag for the plan for vans. And so I have taken some time out of my pay-through diary because I wanted to welcome Mark Newberry to our podcast today, because this is an amazing privilege, Mark, to grab the bull by the horns, get to know each other and understand some of our wonderful pioneers out there, of which you are definitely one. I've been trawling the internet and I can see that Europcar is truly a pioneer in this space, and more on that in a second. But Mark, this is about you, so please give us your introduction. Tell us all about you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, hi everyone. Really great to be here and to make my podcasting debut. So we'll see come the end of this if this is a once and done, or if it's the start of a clear new career. Yeah, really delighted to be here. So hi everyone. I'm Mark Newberry. I'm the commercial director for Europcar UK and Ireland. Really delighted to be here. So in terms of who I am, so I'm Mark. I'm a father of three daughters, currently 12, 10 and 7. I'm married and I'm a Bristolian, so occasionally I might tend to just drift off into a bit Bristolian, but I try to row it back to allow our listeners to follow me easily. I enjoy sport, dyslexic. My mum's Irish, dad's English. There's a good old mix of heritage in there. In terms of my work, so my role at Europcar. So I'm a member of our UK and Ireland leadership team. So I'm a member of our board, and I work alongside my peers and colleagues in the board to try and help look after our customers, drive this transition into electric mobility, and help win new customers. So Europcar, we were founded 75 years ago in Paris by an entrepreneur who wanted to mutualise the really expensive asset that was the automobile. He tried to do it in the early 1900s, but the First World War got in the way. So he was only able actually to get round to it just after the Second World War, because mobility was happening, but it was very expensive and people just didn't have access to it. So he thought, if I can buy these assets, I can essentially car share way ahead of its time, and allow people to have access to mobility. So that sense of helping people get where they need to be, of being entrepreneurial, of finding solutions, that is kind of right at the very heart of what Europcar are about. And we do that 24/7, 365. We do it in 140 countries, and we do it under a couple of brands. So Europcar is our lead brand in Southern Europe. We use Goldcar as well as a more value offering, and also the premium offering of Europcar. And we've got some local hero brands in different territories. There's Fox in the States. We've got an amazing car sharing business in Ireland called GoCar. It's really innovative. So it's a really diverse business. And we rent cars, and we rent vans, and we rent trucks. So when people think of car rental or car hire, generally they picture that holiday abroad, you're in the sun and you need a car for a couple of weeks. And we do that. But we also provide vehicles to businesses. And actually in the UK, around 65% of our revenue is supporting businesses. So big, small, large, all around the country, doing all sorts of things, whether it's business travel or trucks because they're in construction. They need to fleet up, they need to fleet down, they need to transition their fleet to EVs. We take the financial risk, we buy the assets, and we give them to these businesses on a flexible basis. So you're not tied into that 3-4 year lease. You've got the flexibility to adjust your mobility solutions to the size, nature, and shape of your business at that time. It's a really interesting business. And I joined here in October 2022 after about 18 years in the insurance sector.
What a journey. That's quite a leap. I definitely want to delve into that. And the way I see it, you guys are experts in mobility. So it's not just about putting a car in someone's hands, it's understanding how they're going to use it and sort of supporting them in that journey. And so you're also experts in EV now, and that's about making the positive change for just the environment, but also people's lives and being here to help. And I was recalling a very enjoyable time that we both shared actually on the EV rally last year. And Team Europcar, I was very lucky to be co-hosting the rally with John Curtis, and we loved interviewing Team Europcar because the energy that you all brought with you everywhere you went, the photo bombing, the green army as you were known as you went round. Now, for those that don't know, and by the way, you can watch back this podcast or listen to it. I tend to listen, but we have been warned, both of us are parents, so Mark may have one of his 3 children bundling in the background in a minute, but we'll carry on regardless, because that's what we do on the EV Cafe. But back to the rally. This is right up your street because, of course, you cover UK and Ireland yourself. And the whole point of the rally was to demonstrate how EVs can be sustainable and viable as transportation and bring to life those capabilities of EV across that slightly more challenging charging network as we see it today. But come on, hit me with your take. Now I've sprung that on you. What was the rally like for you and your team?
Yeah, so it was amazing. So my role, just to build on that, and then I'll draw that together into the experience of the rally and how it all comes together. So I look after our B2B, so business to business, and our leisure sales teams here in Ireland. I look after our marketing team, so brand and e-commerce and propositions and websites and all that stuff here in Ireland, and also our contact centres where we speak to customers and help them with their mobility. So EVs and the transition to EVs runs through all of those teams. So if imagine a stick of rock and you've got EVs kind of running right through the middle of it. And I think, COVID, then supply chain, really tough couple of years. Actually, businesses in our sector were quite heavily impacted. And so you had to kind of retrench, focus on your core and try to make sure you're running kind of sustainable and viable businesses. And since then, we've been able to reinvest and explore growth. And so last year we did some things that were firsts, things that I'm really proud of. It was my first year. My teams were able to come together and to work multifunctionally on these projects. And the EV Rally was an amazing example of that. So we hadn't done it before. In my previous role, when I worked at Green Flag as part of the Direct Line Group, I'd observed the EV Rally. And so it's something that I observed and spotted and kind of recommended to the business that this might be something that we could do. So our marketing team did an amazing job of looking at it, working with fleets so we can get the vehicles, and working with our sales teams so we can get some customers in the vehicles as well as our staff. And it was a really amazing experience. I think the lead up to it really built a sense of excitement, a sense of, we're doing something, we are contributing to this transition and we are making a difference. We're going to demonstrate that you can use EVs, you can get about the country, you can do some decent distances, and it's totally doable, and it's here today. Like, you can do it today. And so we kind of went big. We thought, go big or go home. So we entered in 4 vehicles. We went really strong in the branding. We had a camera crew follow us around with drones. So they were kind of, creating some really amazing footage because we wanted to do it properly, to bring it to life for our people, for our customers, and for frankly, anyone else who'd listen, that this thing was possible. We had a lot of participants. So we had 4 cars. And we had about 4 or 5 people that did the whole thing, the whole 5 days. So for those who aren't aware, it was the 5 Cities Capital Challenge, 1,400 miles, Cardiff to London to Edinburgh to Belfast to Dublin. So we covered a lot of ground. We had 4 or 5 folk who did the whole thing, but then the cars were full every day with different people coming in and out for a day. So there's a lot of logistics to get people to a start point, getting them back from a drop off. But we wanted to give as many people access to the experience as possible. So the team who did the whole thing say it was amazing. It was exhausting, but they felt a real sense of achievement once they'd completed it. I joined on the first day, which is Cardiff through to London. And then that day culminated, we had our checkpoint at Leicester, the Match Early Woods Welford Road Leicester Tigers Stadium, and we just done a relationship with them We just branded their stadium. So we had two big projects that we kind of pulled together that somehow, when we drove the EVs onto the pitch, we drove underneath a cherry picker that was fitting the final rivets in the stop of the signage. So it was kind of just in time. So it's a wonderful way of, I think, demonstrating to our teams and our business, when we collaborate, we can do amazing things. You've got to believe it and then go do it. But then also an amazing way to show to our people, our customers, and anyone else who'd listen that EVs are here today and they're totally viable. I really enjoyed it. I remember returning home the next day thinking, crikey, I'm knackered. And that was just one day. so fair play to you and John who did the whole thing, interviews and logistics and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that. It is a long day. It's often 12 or 14 hours, but we do it for the exact same reason. And it is about that collaborative piece. And what was really annoying is that John got to go to the Tigers. I did not get to go to the Tigers. And then, just to really put salt in the wound, I think you guys got invited back. Him and Paul went and watched a game there at your... I did. Those watching, yes. I did a very loud eye roll at Mark just then when he brought up the issue of the Tigers. But you actually had some really cool vehicles with you. You had Teslas, MG4s, you had the Aura Funky Cat as well. What else did you have?
Yeah, we had a VW Buzz, we had a Skoda Enyaq.
That's right.
And
you went to your Europcar Heathrow, didn't you? The flagship.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And Heathrow is an amazing station. I mean, just the Heathrow Airport, just the number of people that they deal with, thousands of folk go through those terminals. And our station, it's our flagship station now. We deal with thousands upon thousands of customers throughout the year. And actually, as part of when I decided that I wanted to make a move away from Direct Line Group and find a new challenge, there's a few different organisations I was speaking to, and I wanted to find something that would help me build on my skills, but add some stretch, add something different, add some variety, and help me grow. So there are a few different orgs that I was speaking to, and they all have reasonably elongated processes, 4 or 5 steps. And one of the processes in my Europcar, one of the stages of my Europcar process was to go to Heathrow and have an interview there. So I got there early and I sat in the car park and just kind of secret shopped. I wanted to work for an organisation that cared about its people, cared about its customers, and cared about making a difference. And so I sat there and I could just see the care in which they were treating customers. You've got folk kind of long haul, knackered, their journey might have already been challenged. They might have had issues with their baggage or the flights and all that stuff. And they reach us and they want to get their vehicle, they want to get on their way, and they want to feel safe and reassured and understand what they're driving, especially if they're international travellers. And I could just see our team cope with the variety of different needs that these customers have, tailoring their approach, and I arrived to that interview thinking this might be one for me, but I'm hedging my bets. And by the time I actually walked into the interview, I wanted the job, if that makes sense, because I'd seen enough to make me think, right, this is where I want to be.
That is a great way of approaching a new role. And congrats as well, because you're coming up 2 years now. I think you said 2022 you joined there. So that's fascinating way to choose that career path. I actually first encountered Europcar quite some time ago now when I was working for the West of England Combined Authority with Bristol City Council specifically, who were really forward thinking about car clubs and mobility instead of encouraging people to own vehicles. Yes. So for me, the transport hierarchy has lease and car rental is quite important to making sure that we're not building congested cities, which of course contributes to clean air as well. Yes. And Europcar are always very easy to work with, very flexible and very sort of eager. Great. And recently I've understood you guys are going through a pretty major ESG, environmental sustainable governance process, which must be unfathomably hard considering what a gigantic organisation it is. And the thing about strategy, and I know at Paythrough, I'm their Chief Strategy Officer, isn't just about making great plans. It's the ability to communicate those great plans, get buy-in for those great plans, and ultimately deliver those great plans. And I'm really glad that you guys are part of the wider EV Cafe ecosystem for 2024. I'm hopeful that we can support you and your messaging as we kind of go forward. But everything stems from... all change, I think, stems from somebody being brave enough to go and do something and put their stake in the ground and make it count. And you yourself had a career change. What was it that made you just want to pivot?
when you were talking then about strategy and delivery, I've just finished listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger's a book, which is kind of 7 Rules for Life, and he reflects on what it took for him to grow up in a small village in Austria, to have the vision to become a bodybuilder, to go from that to deciding he could be an actor, to go from action to comedy, to go from acting to politics, and then more recently to go from politics to the environment. So it's a fascinating listen. And one of his phrases is follow up and follow through. And I think that's brilliant. And it really, that's really stuck with me, because on that strategy point, you can have a plan, but it's about the follow up and follow through that really brings the change to life, because otherwise it's just a plan. In terms of I'm trying to recall the question.
Your pivot. You found a moment. Yeah, I'd quite like you to embellish what you were saying about Arnold Schwarzenegger, because we're all drawn to people who inspire us, right? And you did mention that you're sporting. Anybody that's watching or has known Mark, you can tell straight away. A sports person always has a sort of very direct. You can always tell that they're on point. They know what they're thinking about, which is ironic because we both just fell over our own question. But for everyone listening, I just want you to know that Mark is very focused, and I wanted to ask why you decided to pivot away from the role you were doing to where you are now.
So if I step back a bit, so I'll maybe talk a little bit about how I kind of ended up at Dark Line Group anyway, and then that kind of leads into a period of retirement. So, so grew up in Bristol, me and an older brother and a younger sister, from a very happy and loved family, but, working class. Dad left school at about 14, I think, became a self-employed plasterer, worked for his dad, who was a carpenter. Mum eventually got like a support job in a school. So we just played sport. We didn't really have stuff, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to over-egg it. But yeah, so we always had a sense of working class values. You work hard, you do a good job, and you try to achieve what you can. So I remember we all got part-time jobs pretty youngish, because it gave us a bit of spend money. So I remember working in a local pub at 14, just washing all the plates. And we'd serve 100 people a night, and I'd do all that stuff just in a domestic sink, and then the chef stuff. But it was a way of, right, if I do this and I do a good job, I'll earn some money, and maybe one day I can be a waiter. And if I do that, I can. So from this kind of working class kind of roots, I had these ambitions of maybe one day I could be a solicitor, or maybe I could be an architect, or I could do something that is kind of aspirational and would earn money, basically. So I settled on doing a law degree. So I went to just normal comprehensive schools, a comprehensive sixth form, and did a degree at the University of West of England, so I could live at home, worked at a golf club, and paid for uni. So I didn't kind of have lots of debt. And so this is my grand plan. And I worked for about 6 months as a paralegal after my degree in this law firm, and I just hated it. And I thought, I just felt there were things in me that I wouldn't be able to reveal from what I could see in this career. I'd been president of the University Football Club, and we'd achieved things we hadn't achieved before. We'd won stuff, and I just kind of felt I had these other traits that perhaps wouldn't be seen here. And so I wasn't happy. So I left there and got a job at Churchill. I was on the phones in the contact centre speaking to customers when they'd had an accident, and predominantly when there was a discussion over liability, who was at fault. And it was using my kind of legal experience to do that work. But that was a bit of this wasn't the plan. The plan was I was going to be a solicitor or a lawyer, like you see on the telly. I had this wholly inaccurate view of me driving Mercedes and all that stuff, and so therefore I just had to fight my way forward. So again, if I work hard, if I learn, if I be a good colleague, if I try to take on board feedback, and if I kind of sense where there's opportunities, I never had a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. I just had what's next? Maybe I can do more. And so I kind of bobbed and weaved my way through this organisation. So I was in claims, personal lines, speaking to customers. I helped them set up a customer relations complaint team that did complaints for all the different brands that they had. So Direct Line, Churchill, Privilege, and across some of the different product lines of car, motor, home. And we did that for the offices in Bristol. And then I was able to get on the development course and became a team leader. But that was in commercial insurance. So suddenly we're insuring businesses, SMEs, Clinton cards, pubs, builders. And that was all distributed via brokers. So a builder would go to a broker and say, hey, Mr. Broker, can you get me insurance? And they would come to us and other companies, and we would provide an insurance quotation. So suddenly I'm managing a team of underwriters and pricers who are technical. I'm the youngest on the team, and they are experienced and very capable people. So that was quite a step. And then I remember thinking about kind of what next. I was in that role for a while, and then an opportunity came up to go on a talent program, and off the back of that, I was asked if I would like to be the exec assistant to the MD, who kind of ran this division. So suddenly that would be in London. I was always in Bristol, and again that was a bit of a step. But each time it was, well, if I work hard and if I keep learning and take the feedback, and if I make sure that the role supports my home and my home supports the role, because they've got to be yin and yang, it's got to kind of work, if that makes sense. If you're unhappy at home, it won't work at work, and vice versa. And that was a bit of a pivot because we just had our first child. So suddenly, after paternity leave, I went back to work 2 days a week in London. So that was a bit of a challenge, but we made it work. And then from there, I had some other opportunities, and each time it was a step. It was a bit of growth, founded on what I'd learned before, but with a little bit of new. If that makes sense. So I'd enter it knowing that I feel like I've got the capabilities to do this, but it's going to add that thing to my skill set. It's going to add that thing to my skill set, and so I'm going to grow as a result. So I, looking back over the 18 years, I probably did about 8 jobs, I think, just kind of stepping through, every 2 to 3 years. And then the last role I had was at Green Flag, where we were kind of trying to transform the business. So we were trying to grow, we were changing our tech, changing everything about the business really, whilst also trying to deliver an amazing in-the-moment service. And actually, during my final year of that role, our MD left to take another role, and I ended up kind of overseeing the business for about 3 to 4 months. So kind of somewhat unwittingly, I'd gone from joining on the phone to the contact center to kind of in a pseudo MD position over a 180 million pound business that was kind of rescuing somebody every 45 seconds, and it all kind of emerged, I guess. And so I did that, and I kind of thought, well, I've kind of zigzagged. I've almost done the length and breadth of this business, and maybe it's time for me to explore something new. And so I kind of just took phone calls, whereas I had ignored them for 18 years. And so yeah, and again, my principles were the same. Will it be something that will get my passionometer going? Am I going to feel passionate about the role? Because I think you've got to want it and believe it, and then you'll drive at it and hopefully succeed it. Is it something that I think will build on my skills? Have I got a good chance of doing well in the role? But is it something that interests me and will stretch me? And so Europcar for me, working with UK and Ireland was a bigger territory. My mum's Irish, so I've spent quite a bit of time over there growing up. So, that connection appealed. I'd never worked in a global organisation, and I find it so stimulating when I speak to my peers now and I get an update on trading in the Nordics or Southern Europe, or you just get this kind of global view that I find really, really interesting. So that was a stretch. And of course, the big one, moving into the rental sector, because I'd been in insurance for 18 years. So it was, can I take my transferables and do it somewhere else? And I knew it would be a learning curve. And I knew it would be a challenge, and it has, but it's been really rewarding. And I felt like I've stepped forward again, if that makes sense. So that's probably the reason for the pivot, was that freshness, that newness, and growth.
Yeah, I think that's a really inspiring set of descriptors there, because you cited the fact that you had a passionometer. It's nice that you even know what you might be passionate about, but you also described your principles and that you knew you needed this to work for you and your family, because I think people often think work is the be all and end all, and whilst it helps to enable our lives, it has to be passionate. It has to be passionate too. I can't agree more. It's been 18 years I've been delivering infrastructure, be that as part of a project or an engineering team. And I've just did 2 years now, almost to the day, been in software and finance. And it's a completely new subject matter with which I only ever know, a proportion of it. But you don't have to. And I love what you described there about bouncing around the company before you found your sort of breadth and ability. And that's exactly what I hope people listening can realise is I've just come off the back. My myself now today from the AFP, the Association of Fleet Professionals. Highly recommend every organisation joins. I'm on the Diversity and Leadership Committee, which is a new committee that was formed because we saw a responsibility that we all have collectively in the automotive and fleet industry to be encouraging that nurturing growth of one's own role and encouraging people to come. And today's question for the board, which I thought was really interesting, the committee, that's going to go to the board, was how do we encourage inclusivity within our recruitment processes? Making sure that these applications aren't, there was one particular very pioneering decision taken with one group where they would only recruit graduates until they've reached that balance. And we felt actually as a group that was almost a little detrimental to diversity and inclusion because you're excluding a huge swathe of people who can't afford to go to university, didn't want to go to university, or whose skills it. Now, you mentioned in your introduction self-professed dyslexic. And I think, again, we have such a wide community that there will be people who strongly appreciate understanding how you've enhanced your work with the skills that gives you, or how it's held you back as well. Would you mind going into it for us? When did you find out? Does it hinder you? What is it?
Happy to. And just on the point of inclusivity. I'm a big advocate for that. It's something in Direct Line Group we did quite a bit of work about in my previous career. It's also something here at Europcar that they are also focused on, and actually that's why I mention it, because when people look at me, they would see the pale male stereotype perhaps that people might use of male leaders in the Middle Ages, my grandmother was an Irish immigrant who left her country to come here. My granddad was orphaned after the First World War, so him and his brothers kind of grew up themselves. So social mobility on both sides, if that makes sense, as well. So there's a bit more depth, I think, often to folk than you might see. But dyslexia. So I guess I'd often struggled with spelling as just an obvious way to start. So I remember in primary school, quite late on, they suddenly kind of put me into a group to help with spelling days of the week and months of the year and all that stuff. And it kind of got caught, so there was nothing mentioned about it then, but just that I wasn't always very good at spelling. And then I definitely know that in my exams at different times, I got marked down for spelling because there was a punctuation thing wasn't there and the spelling stuff. So I definitely know I got marked down, but again, nothing really thought of and done. And then it wasn't until actually in Direct Line Group they had some talks, a whole different range of talks, and they had one on neurodiversity, and I listened to them. And they had one on dyslexia, and this senior female leader shared her experience of being dyslexic, and I thought, oh yeah, that sounds familiar. Oh yeah, crikey, that sounds familiar. Oh yeah, that bit that sounds familiar too. And so I spoke to them about it, and I was able to arrange a test. So I had like a 3.5 hour-ish. Was it that long? No, a bit short. About 2 hours, I think it was. But it was quite an in-depth assessment. But it was like this because it was remote, and there's all sorts of things in there. So there were things like recognizing patterns of geometric shapes and what would the next sequence be in that range of shapes. There were your ability to speed read letters or speed read numbers. There was spelling. There was how quickly can you read a piece of text. There was kind of cognitive memory a test. It was quite a diverse set of tests. I actually quite enjoyed it, but it was quite a diverse set of tests. And then I'd be told to get the results in a little while. But then she said to me at the end, she said, "I'm pretty sure I can give you a result in about 45 minutes." And I was like, right, okay, so I'm either nailed on or I'm nailed not, if that makes sense. It's pretty clear. Yeah. And then so I made myself available to speak in 45 minutes later, and she said, yeah, you're very clearly dyslexic. She said, we don't, old terminology would be you're heavily dyslexic or you're a little bit dyslexic. That was the kind of words that they would have used historically. And they said, we don't really do that now, but we just show you across these different tests, and they kind of aggregate them up into four main factors where you appear, and we look at the range, because there'll be something that you're very good at, there'll be something you might struggle with, and the range is almost a strength of your your kind of dyslexia. So I think something like my top score was something like 96, which was kind of out the box high, and then I think my bottom score was something like 3. so I said, oh, that looks to me like a decent range. And then we stepped into, because it all comes in different forms and different flavors for each person, because there's a range of different tests that she did and a range of different things that might be strengths or challenges. So kind of recognizing patterns, strategic themes, connecting lots of information, creative thinking, that kind of stuff high. Apparently I read about half as fast as like a normal non-dyslexic person. But again, it's just how I read, so I didn't really realize that. I can spell, but there are some words that I struggle with phonically to piece together. And then often, if I do some writing, I won't always recognize it's the wrong word I've used, or if I've missed a word. So say past and past. Now I both know what those two words mean, or past and past. So I both know that they mean different things, if that makes sense. But if I were to use the wrong one in a sentence and I read the sentence, your brain just kind of autocorrects it and it won't spot that you've used the wrong one. Or if I've writing a sentence, I miss out the word the or something small, as you read it, your brain just sees the big picture and is this communicating what I want it to do? Yes, okay. Then the detail doesn't kind of matter. That's kind of what so that's one element. And the other element that I is more noticeable is the recall of detail in the moment. So the way it's explained to me is, your computer might have a RAM and therefore a really big memory. It might be able to store lots of information, but it will have a processor, and its ability to process lots of things at the same time might be challenged. And so I know lots of stuff, but if you ask me a specific question, I might not know if the answer is 4 or 5 or 6, but I will know if it's better than last year or worse than last year, or up or down or trending in the right direction, if that makes sense. And so that's definitely something that I was definitely aware of, because like for important meetings, I would prep a lot and I would take in a lot of notes, because I just wouldn't trust my brain to fetch the thing that I needed it to fetch in the moment it fetched it, in the moment it needed to. So I was kind of aware of this stuff. I just didn't realize it was a thing. So yeah, I felt kind of a little bit overwhelmed when they told me, actually. Like I was quite emotional, and I wasn't expecting it to be, but I was. And I think it was almost a sense of like, this is a thing. These things I've struggled with are actually a thing, and it's not just me. Like it is a thing, and there's some tools that they can use to help. And then what was really interesting was I shared my report with my brother and sister, and they were like, yeah, that's familiar. I recognise that, or I'm going to do that. That might help, because it is supposed to be hereditary. And so yeah. So I've kind of, it's made me more aware of the things I'm really good at. And that maybe when I connect dots, or I need to explain my thinking a bit, because I might be thinking of different things and connecting different data points that other people might not be thinking. So I need to bring them on the journey a bit, which is cool. And then equally, just reinforcing my coping mechanisms for detail and prep, and having the people around you that might have the traits that you don't have, so that as a team you are kind of complete, if that makes sense. So yeah, I really And my eldest daughter was doing some homework the other day. She had to do a PowerPoint presentation on neurodiversity, and she picked dyslexia. So she had all these different pictures, and then she had a list of people that were dyslexic. So like Einstein, and there's a loads of super brains who are dyslexic. And at the bottom of the list, she put my dad, and she put a little picture of me, which is very sweet of her.
That in itself must have made you quite emotional, because when you found out it was hereditary and obviously shared it with your brother and sister, instantly you would have thought about your children, your 3 children, and whether or not they will be. But it's this time of life that we're noticing so many people finding comfort in finding out what's, inverted commas, been wrong with them this whole time. Having that ability, and something we talk about a lot in the EV Cafe, is openness and sharing and mental health awareness and just understanding yourself so much better. And credit particularly to John Curtis and Paul Kirby on this one, who do speak really openly about it. I too have been very happy to share things that I find hard. And as you were speaking, suddenly my eyebrows shot through the roof because you chose the words past and past, and I constantly use the wrong one. So I'd quite like to do one of these tests myself. And my recall, again, the knowledge bank is huge, but the ability to ask on demand for a fact or a figure is incredibly challenging. But I agree with you. I don't see these as limitations once you know what you're doing. For example, you said you had an audiobook of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I know there is no point. I read a book, a storybook, like it's a scientific journal. So if I miss a word, I have to go back. So for me, reading is quite intense. It's not relaxing. I don't get this wonderful, beautiful image that other people get when they start reading words. But an audiobook takes me to another land, as does a movie or listening to someone like you talk and paint me a picture. I enjoy it and I find it so much more valuable. I loved study for that reason. Everyone Skyped their lectures. I was there 10 minutes early every single time because I just loved being part of it. And I was thinking about your kids as you spoke, because you grew up with, there was 3 of you, and now you've got 3 of your own, which is very exciting. What are you seeing in those 3 personalities as they evolve? Are you enjoying watching them grow into mini versions of you and your partner?
So it's interesting. So I remember reading something a little while back. So if there's 3 of you, and they do kind of studies and all kind of generalized, but the eldest is more likely to perhaps have a job where they might work on something more technical or for more periods of isolation, or the middle one might be more relationship based. Is probably the one more likely to reach kind of senior leadership roles because of their abilities to manage relationships and communicate. And the younger one might be a bit more free spirited, might be a bit more creative, and charity work or creative work. So I read this. So my brother is like a quantitative surveyor, so he does technical work.
He's the oldest, I trust, from your description.
He's the oldest. Yeah, he's the oldest. He's three years oldest. I do what I do, and then our youngest sister works in the third sector, helping disabled people to get active and to get into sport and to find kind of fulfillment through that. So we somehow fit the model. And then when I look at my kids, they're all growing and developing their traits, and they all, but one of the eldest is quite studious. She's getting good scores at school. Seems to be a bit of an all-rounder. Emma is equally bright, but is very sporty and got a bigger friendship circle. And will play well with Molly or play well with Belle. So that relationship theme you can see is kind of emerging. And Annabelle, the youngest, is funny, and she is, she's equally bright and clever and whatnot, but she's funny, and you can see that kind of spark of personality. So they're all developing in their own ways, and we're entering an interesting year because we're knocking on the door of teenager years, and with 3 daughters, it's going to be a fun time, and I might enter. So I might exit that period with less hair, and the hair I do have will be a lot more grey, I suspect. But it's interesting times ahead.
You'll be absolutely fine. And I think people that know me well know that I had 2 stepchildren, and they're now 21 and 18. So they're absolutely long gone. And my current child, she's still around. She's just turned 11, but she's definitely, they call them tweenagers or something, almost a teenager. But we laugh. My goodness, that there's times where we're crying with laughter because the lives that they lead at ages that they're at are so much more advanced than the years I had when I was 11. And I think that's all brought around by technology. And, I wanted to know for you, because obviously people have different motivations in life. They do what they do for a reason. It could be entirely selfish. Some people do genuinely just want to work to earn a living. Like you say, they've got an end goal in life. People like me are very open about the fact they just need to have that feeling of having done something valuable and progressive, and money isn't so much of a motivator. And where do you find yourself sitting on that spectrum of motivation? And maybe there was someone along the way who made you feel that way. Tell us all about it.
Interesting. I think so I've never had a grand kind of
you can say me, by the way, if I inspire you and you want to be just, that's fine.
I mean, that is the obvious thing to say. Let's start there, and we'll just underline it as well. Write it in bold. Yeah, so I think probably the work ethic of my family, I wouldn't have credited it at the time, but is inspiring. I see that in all of us. Like, my mum used to work her socks off looking after us, and then when she was at school, my dad would come home and be so exhausted from work, he'd fall asleep on the sofa. And like being a plasterer was a really demanding physical job, and equally with my granddad. And we used to go and labour on him and my granddad on weekends and summer holidays. I think we enjoyed it, and when I say we, this is me and my brother. I think we enjoyed it. It gave us a bit of cash, but I think they did it to show us to work hard at school, and then you just give yourself some more options. So I think definitely the sense of grafting to kind of create your own future, I think is being proud of. It doesn't matter quite how much you've got, and so it's not really about wealth. It's about just providing for those around you and giving yourself a chance. So yeah, they were definitely motivational. I think I remember being a team leader, and I'd gone for a couple of different roles, and I hadn't quite come off. And there was a senior leader there at the time, and I wanted to go on a talent program, and so I just kind of always just looked at the job above you. So if I'm a team leader, maybe I could be an ops manager. If I'm an ops manager, maybe I could be and we had to fill in this form to say what we wanted to do. And her advice was just don't limit yourself. Just say you want to grow and develop, and go there and see, because you'll see a whole new world. You might see different things that you don't know now. So again at the time, that was really helpful. I probably wouldn't have credited it as being inspiring, but when I reflect, that's actually quite a pivotal conversation, because it helped me just to open up my horizons. Because all I really saw was a ladder in front of me. I didn't realise there were ladders over here and over here and over here and some over there. And then there were two kind of leaders that I've worked with in my prior 18 years. So when I was that executive assistant, basically kind of right hand person to an MD who was running a portfolio of brands, different distribution channels, and just watching the way that he guided that business, how he listened first to multiple points of view before he would make up his mind and share his thoughts, and just that ability to listen, to understand, to respect the thoughts of those around you and their expertise before you came to a conclusion. And then more recently, my final 4 years at Direct Line, the MD there. So this ability to emotionally lead, to really connect your people with the why, and why what they're doing really matters, because you're helping someone, and you've got to be there for them in their moment of need. It's that kind of emotional connection, but then also how you can really drive a result, and just be kind of relentless in your pursuit of improving things. And just because you haven't done it in the past, it doesn't mean that you can't do it in the future. So that mix of emotional leadership with kind of ambition and pace. So there's been a few, crikey, there'll be loads I've missed along the way, but I genuinely believe that you can learn things from everyone if you've got your eyes open. And if you're resilient enough in a way to take the learning and to go, actually, I think if I do that, that can just improve that a bit. I'm going to stick it in my backpack. I'm not quite sure when or where I'm going to need it, but at some point I'm probably going to need that, and I can take it out and use it, and that's going to help me be a better leader. So yeah. And in terms, therefore, of how that kind of manifests itself into my motivation, I always just want to do a good job. And that sounds a pretty basic thing. But if my boss, if those around me think I'm doing a good job, and I get that kind of feedback, then that works for me. And my experience has been, if you do a good job, then things happen. You somehow create yourself opportunities. But when I was looking at what organisations are doing, I did kind of really pause almost for the first time and think more about, well, what's really important to me? My home's really important to me. Having that balance is really important to me. So I've got some red lines there that I need to declare. And working for an organisation that's some ethics, that looks after its people, I wouldn't be happy you're not going to get the best of me in an organisation that doesn't look after its people or doesn't really care about its customers. I don't want to supply products to customers that are no good. I want to be proud of the work that we do. And then the opportunity to make a difference to the planet is, we've got to do it. So we did 3.5 million EV miles last year. So that's loads of ICE miles taken off the road, and that's amazing. Like when I got my first EV, the girls loved it. They loved the idea that we were doing something here to help. So yeah, that sense of purpose is what motivates me. I get up in the morning, I go for a run. That helps me kind of keep fit, both mentally and physically. And then I can get cracking into the day, empty the tank, and then go and kind of regroup with the family when the day's done.
It's absolutely a privilege to have known hard work, to have understood that you wanted to go through university and have those jobs. Although you're working all the hours around the clock, you achieved your original aim. It's also a privilege to know that your original aim may be misplaced, but actually being brave enough to acknowledge that you have made an error, but you learned something along the way. It's also a complete privilege to have people as your motivation, whether that's your family or your approval from your management or whichever company you ever work with. Congrats, Europcar, by the way, for getting hold of Mark. You've been there 2 years already, and I hope that it's much longer time. Now, one thing that I probably should have done is stuck to the script, would be the first thing I'd say. No, not at all. But there is a really great question that Paul Kirby always asks, or John, at the end of these. And sadly, we are coming to the end of this time with you. Not forever. I'm sure we'll do another one. But it says here, and I really like this: if you could wave a magic wand, what one thing would you change about your work, workplace, or perhaps industry? But you can extend that if you like, because I've heard some of these answers listening back to this podcast series, and the brain goes all over the place. So here's your magic wand. Where would you like to wave it?
Crikey. Crikey, there's lots I'd like to fix. I mean, peace would be good, but I know that's
people again. I love how most of your answers revolve around people. I love that.
And it's really interesting, actually. Just obviously I do a commercial role, and so I've tried to kind of align in my thinking that kind of people, back into that commerciality, and the kind of model I've landed on is if you've got people who are collaborative and enabled and performing, and if they're performing well for your patrons, just because your customers, then that will give you a chance to make revenues and profits. And so I've got this kind of virtuous circle, and if you do that, you've got a chance of making a difference for the planet. So I kind of crafted the people bit into it. But peace would be one. I would love a way just to get truth back into society. Like this year, US election, UK election, election in Ireland. There's going to be election in India. I think there's elections all over the shop. And having truth in all of those processes would be amazing. And there's so much spin and just so that folk really understand the kind of decisions that we're making well-informed decisions that are going to help us in the future, whatever those decisions might be. I'd love that to be kind of re-established, and then just going harder and faster at trying to improve the planet, because it's crikey, we've got work to do, and when people pause, or governments pause, or organisations pause, are a bit indecisive and not sure, we just got to crack on. Like, we need to shape a better tomorrow, and that starts today. Like it started started years ago. Like we haven't got time, so let's go. So it's quite a big wand, and I've got 3 of them, but that's what I'd like to.
That is not greedy, that is intentional. I think that's really worthy end to the show, because Mark, you are obviously a pioneer who really puts people at the heart of your decision-making process, be that the job you do or the way you do your job. And I for one, am so pleased that Europcar was on the rally. I'm pleased that you're part of the EV Cafe. Thank you for your collaboration and contribution.
Thank you.
And most of all, on the basis of not having any time and being a very senior person with a very busy life, I fully appreciate that you've just devoted nearly an hour of that to us. And thank you to our listeners too, because of course they're here to engage with you as a person, and you've done nothing but open up to share what I hope people will find as inspiring as I have. So I would love to now thank you, and we will close this episode of the EV Cafe. Till next time, everyone, it's bye from me and bye from Mark.
Bye-bye.